Hi there, everyone. It is 1:01 here on the West Coast. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, along with Edgar Zazwata, ACSA Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. I'm Naj Alikhan, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing Communications. So happy to have you back after a week off. Go ahead and jump into our chat. Say hello. Let us know where you're watching from today. Tell us what's happening in your school district. Edgar, you and I have actually, this is the second time that you and I have seen each other today. We got to enjoy 2 hours of training today, and it's good to see you after a week off. How are things over in the GR world?
I can't complain. Things, a lot of things are happening, and I take solace, especially from our members, when they actually notice that we're gone. Somebody asks or sends a text message that we were taking a week off. Last week there was a few things. I was a little under the weather too, so we had a number of things, and we are gonna. I think it's one a question here as we enter the summer period. Now, mind you, usually the summer tends to be a time where hopefully, if our members are lucky, things slow down. Hopefully, they're able to take some time. So we'll have to figure out the cadence now, like last summer, and I think we did this throughout the summer last year. There was a lot coming at them. Yeah. And I think we're going to be in a similar situation, maybe not to the same extent, because everything was being rewritten at the time. But there's a lot coming here with like this June 15th, this magic day that we're all been waiting for, June 15th, and the corresponding changes that are going to come. So there's definitely going to be a lot coming at our members. So we're trying to figure out how to best communicate all that here in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, last summer, there were things, it seemed like every show we had something going on twice a week, 3 times a week, there was something. This year, the topics are going to be, very unique coming up here in the summer, especially one topic that you and I know is going to be coming up. The rules changes with regard to guidance and the retirement of the blueprint and CDC guidelines and guidance on masks, and then CDPH, and then OSHA. It's obviously a topic that we know is going to be of a certain magnitude. And that kind of leads to this whole idea right now, because CDPH put out the information yesterday about where we are as far as vaccinations are concerned. 55% of all Californians are at least partially vaccinated, according to CDPH, and then 44% are fully vaccinated. So the numbers are improving. We'll see how that goes. But Edgar, I did want to ask you, because you mentioned June 15th. That's the supposed retirement of the blueprint, but also that's the that's the budget deadline, if you will, which gives us 13 days from now until the budget has to be taken care of and off to the governor's office. Where are we? What are we hearing right now as far as the budget?
Yeah, in the budget, there was actually a little bit of news yesterday. The legislative leadership, which being the Senate and the Assembly, made an announcement that they're coming together and that they have agreement on a framework for the budget. So this means that the Senate and the Assembly leadership have agreed on components of it. That the one party, very important party, that has not agreed to this is the governor. And remember, how this works is May revise presented by the governor, then it goes to the legislature. So the legislature has spent the last couple of weeks trying to go through some of those details that the governor presented. They undoubtedly seek to put their own spin on things and then try to figure out where they go from there. So what they announced yesterday is that the Senate and the Assembly have some agreement. They still have to negotiate that with the governor. Some of the notable pieces that our folks would be interested in is, one, the legislature is deeming there to be more money than the governor did. And this is not uncommon. This happens quite often where the legislature in their plan, they'll say, no, actually, we're going to go with the legislative analysts. And they deem that there's more revenue. And that's what happened with the legislature this year. They're saying there's actually $4 billion more than what the governor had projected. And with that, as it relates to the school budget, they kind of double down on many of the investments that the governor had proposed for schools. So a lot of those programs that we had talked about, noteworthy, a couple of them that weren't in the governor's budget, they're proposing money for pension costs to help draw down PERS and STIRS costs, which I know many of our folks have been asking about, so that we see that as good news. They are proposing to fully pay off the deferrals, which the governor hadn't proposed. So I think we like that. And then they are also putting some money to help mitigate some increases in unemployment insurance increases that our schools were going to see. So those are all good things. Now, with that said, that's all on the basis that there's more money. Now we'll have to see what happens between the executive branch and the legislative branch on what compromise they'll ultimately come to get a final agreement.
Well, and I'm looking over at the comments there, and Charlie Hoffman, ACSA president for 2021-2022, but good afternoon. So much money to talk about. I think that it's interesting that we are hearing some fluctuations in how one group sees the budget figures compared to the other, because there's some increases and it's kind of fluid. How does that pave the way for these next 13 days? I mean, is the governor going to get, just from your outlook, is the governor going to be getting a budget that he likes, or is there things in there that we are going to see change even after that?
No, in a year like this where there's resources out there, this is a different situation than we were talking even a year ago, as we've said many times. So a couple of fair assumptions. They're going to have a budget by the constitutional deadline of June 15th. They're going to meet that requirement because if they don't get paid. So that's actually going to happen. I don't think that there'll be a lot of back and forth with the governor. There always is. There's things that their respective priorities, they all have their own slant on where things should land. But I expect that this won't be something that there'll be a lot of conflict about. I do think that they'll come to agreement. The one piece I didn't talk about, which we're still waiting to see the details, is ultimately where they land on some of this. Doesn't necessarily have to do with money, but it's going to be tied up with the budget. It's where are they going to land on this whole issue of virtual learning, independent study? What are going to be the rules for independent study? There has been some concerns raised from us and some other education groups that we understand the intent of trying to get daily interaction and some of those components for students that may be opting to do distance learning like they did this last year and using independent study. But what about the traditional students who had used independent study, who are using it for very specific reasons, whether it be health issues or other factors that kind of prevent them from being in front of a teacher on a day-to-day basis? So that's one of the big questions that I would say is still outstanding, that's tied up with the budget, not necessarily a fiscal issue in itself, but will play itself out in the next couple of weeks.
I want to say hello to Terrence and Aaron and Pam, Mary, Jan, Todd Barlow, many of our loyal viewers. Grant Bennett, your former superintendent, wants to remind you.
Yes, that's always exciting. Graduation time is always an exciting time.
Hey, let me just reference somebody, and Gianna, if you have a chance to put this back on screen, because I want to know about Scott Smith here. Scott Smith puts in his comment, Edgar sharing good news, always great to hear. But he is giving a thumbs up in there. I want to know if he just changed his avatar because you were giving good news, or if that's Scott's new avatar. I would like to know, Scott, if you can pass that.
Maybe Scott's a positive guy and everything deserves a thumbs up.
Seriously. All right, folks, we want to talk summer programs because as has been noted, there is money right now out there for school districts to be using to fund summer programs, not necessarily just summer school, but enrichment programs, some for grade, some for non-grade, that can really get the students back into the classroom environment. So we have two education leaders on the show with us today. Tiffany Moore, superintendent from Ojai Unified School District, is here with us, as well as Ben Churchill, superintendent, Carlsbad Unified School District. To both of you, thank you so much for being with us. Tiffany, we'll start with you, and then Ben after that. Before we jump into the entire discussion on summer school and summer programs, you have just finished the school year, a school year really like no other. What are your reflections and your big takeaway about a full school year in this pandemic setting? Tiffany, we'll have you start.
Well, let's start and say this is only my second year, so I haven't known a superintendency without COVID, so I don't really have anything else to compare it to. I would say to any of my friends who are interested in becoming a superintendent, I would say don't do it during a pandemic if you have that choice. It's been kind of interesting. I have struggled with just learning that people are always unhappy and people are so divided right now about everything. I was just saying before we started that I get calls every day all day about masks. What are you going to do about masks next year? If you don't have masks, I'm not coming back. If you do have masks, I'm not coming back. And so it's really been a fascinating case study in just staying the course, right? Doing what's right for kids and just saying, this is what we need to do. And you may be mad, but this is what we are going to do because this is the best decision we can make with all the information we have available. And I guarantee you it'll change in the future anyway. So just hold on and be mad later if you're not mad now. So.
And Ben, your school year?
Sure, thank you. You know, for me, I feel like there's been too much talk about learning loss. Certainly, we have to acknowledge there are gaps. We know that there's a growing disparity in access and achievement between high income and low income families and students. But I think we're missing an important opportunity when we only talk about remediating learning loss. In my mind, the answer is acceleration, not remediation. We've learned a lot over the last 14 months. My number one learning is that teachers and students are resourceful, they're flexible, they're creative, and they're resilient. Those are strengths, and they've been further tempered in the fire of the past year. So let's focus on that. My big takeaway, let's build on that foundation. Let's build on our strengths, not our deficits.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Ben, I'll start with the next one. Well, before that, I love Tiffany's comment. Maybe we may have to use that in a commercial. Maybe if it's not the best commercial, if you want to become a superintendent, don't do it during the pandemic. Words to live by there. Ben, on that note, turning to summer and turning to so much focus, and I always have to say, you folks had so much to contend with, thinking about bringing kids back on campus, thinking about the summer, but at the same time, planning for the next academic year. I'll start with you and then ask Tiffany. Set the context. You know, what summer looked like? How many students do you have participating? You know, what do you folks have planned for the summer?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I love the Richard Branson quote. He said, if your dreams don't scare you, they are too small. And for us this summer, we are dreaming big. We're fortunate to have the financial windfall to offer a robust and comprehensive summer school program for all of our students in grades K through 12. I'll look at it by level. For our K-8 students, we've got 3 distinct options. We have an independent study summer learning option for our K through 5 learners. We're going to push out some independent work for them. And for many families, that's going to work great. They're going to, work on acceleration while they're traveling and doing other things. We have a virtual tutoring support option where teachers will be assigned small groups of K through 8 students. They will be working on those same independent study activities in language arts and math, but then they'll have weekly or twice a week check-ins in small groups, and that'll be online in a distance learning format. Finally, we've got intensive in-person instruction, and that'll be a 4-week summer program for grades K through 8. We have a 2-week Gear Up program for our incoming 6th graders and incoming 9th graders. That'll be on campus to help with the transition. And then at the high school level, we've expanded. We traditionally do a credit recovery program for those students who are credit deficient or who need to remediate a grade for A through G requirements. We're continuing to do that, and we're offering that in a distance learning format, in a hybrid format, and in a fully in-person format based on the needs of the families. We're also expanding our partnership with our Ed Foundation to do acceleration options for high school students. Again, it can't only be about remediation. It has to be about acceleration. And that accelerated program will also be offered as an in-person, a hybrid, or a remote learning format.
Tiffany, how about what's going on in Ojai, and what do you guys have planned this summer?
So we are doing a mix of academics and enrichment. Just like Ben was saying, it's we have to make sure that it's not just all a focus on learning loss, but it's also a focus on enriching students and some of the opportunities that kids lost just by not being in school for so long. I'll take it by grade level too, or grade band. So in elementary, we have a TK Readiness program, and we have a kindergarten readiness program, and we're excited about that because we are a district that's always struggling with declining enrollment. And we are using this as a way to get kids back in school. We had a lot of kids in kindergarten who didn't come this year because of mask requirements or a variety of different things. So TK and K Readiness, which are full, completely full. We also have something in elementary called SOAR, and the way that we run summer schools, we put out to our teachers in probably February, and we say, if you could teach anything, what do you want to teach? And they come back and say, I want to teach STEM, I want to teach drumline, I want to teach sustainable food systems. And then we build classes around that and put those out. And so at elementary, actually combined all of those. So we have something called SOAR, STEM, outdoor education, art, and reading. And so all kids will get some assistance with reading, even if they're advanced reading. And we're actually bringing in the therapy dogs, and they're reading books to therapy dogs on campus, that kind of thing. And then they get to be outside, do some gardening, art, and STEM. So we're really excited. Our elementary program is full. We have about 10% of our kids are coming from private schools in the community to come to our free summer program. So we're excited and maybe going to lure them back, hopefully. And then in middle and high school, we have everything from kind of credit recovery, the traditional credit recovery, which is online. We have an intro program, and I'm looking at I have a little postcard here with my classes on it. So we have something at the high school that's called Ready Ranger, because we're the Rangers, something similar at the middle school. And so we have academics, we have Get Ready, and then we have enrichment, which is everything from cheerleading camps, sustainable food systems, drumline, athletic strength and conditioning, esports, game design. And right now we have about a third of our total student population is enrolled in summer school. And we're still.
That's incredible. And I know Ben has some incredible numbers over there as well. Tiffany, let me ask you this question. And folks, go ahead. If you have questions or comments about summer school, summer programs, go ahead and throw those into the chat. Tiffany, we'll have you start, and then Ben right after that. The biggest hurdles for planning for these summer programs, because obviously we wait to see what comes from the May revision. It kind of gives us a bit of a pathway as far as, the fiduciary part of some of these programs. But what have been the big challenges for you guys as you've put these programs together, as you've looked for the nuts and bolts? Tiffany, we'll start with you.
And I know I sound like a broken record, but I have so many parents in our community that are saying, we will not come to kindergarten, we will not come to summer school unless we know what's happening with masks. And we just don't know that, but they are really adamant both ways to know what's happening with masks. And then, teacher fatigue. When this money first came out and we were talking about it in January and February, it was like, have you talked to a teacher in the last school year? Who's going to want to do summer school? Which is part of why we do it the way that we do it, where we say, what do you want to do? And really those teachers that are passionate about something, my cheerleading person and my drumline people, that's not what they teach during the school year, but they want to do this because it's fun and enriching. So I was glad that we got some teachers to teach. Districts around us have had have very, very high summer school salaries compared to where we are, and they've bumped them up significantly this year due to the extra funds. And so one, I don't think that's sustainable. And two, we can't compete with $80 an hour for summer school in the district next door. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. And
Ben, your biggest challenge?
Yeah, sure. We've gone through a lot of challenges over the last year, and in some ways, I think that complying with the latest and greatest rules and requirements it isn't necessarily the greatest challenge for us anymore. We've kind of gotten used to having a roll with it as things change. I'll agree with Tiffany that staffing is probably our biggest issue. I'm impressed, Tiffany, awesome work. If you've got a third of your students enrolled in summer school, that's amazing. We felt really good at about 25% enrollment in summer school. For us, that's about 2,800 students. Our school district has 11,000. So that's a lot of kids, and it's a lot of teachers. What we struggled with initially was getting the enrollment, right? Because I think families were fatigued, teachers were fatigued. Everyone was kind of thinking, man, we just need this thing to end. Let us have our summer. And so when we launched, we dreamed big. We launched our summer programs. Initially, there was very low enrollment. That changed as soon as we asked our teachers to identify and individually reach out to those students and families that we thought would benefit from being involved in summer programming. As soon as that happened, as soon as we made that direct connection, we leaned on our relationships. We saw interest skyrocket, enrollment skyrocket, and we feel really good that the kids who need to be in summer school are going to be there for added support and enrichment and acceleration. The teacher piece was a challenge. Our HR team told me yesterday that we just filled our final teacher vacancy for the summer. So we're making it happen, but it was a challenge. And I do know that we're going to have to find a way to attend to the social emotional needs of our teachers, the mental health needs of our teachers over the summer as well, because they've struggled. They've done an outstanding job. And we just need to continue to find ways to support them.
Ben, I really like what you said about kind of bringing in the data piece, because that's something that we did too, is we, instead of giving the state assessment and the CASP, we're doing IXL just because of a variety of issues, broadband devices, et cetera. But the great thing about that is we have individual assessments. And so we can say to families, we've noticed that you're missing in these skill sets. Here's a great opportunity for you this summer to address these particular things, rather than waiting for that data to come back later. And so we're really trying to do data-driven enrollment in summer school, just like you're talking about.
That's awesome.
You both have talked about the challenges with personnel and just fatigue, not only getting folks to sign up for the summer, and you both have been able to put together comprehensive programs even with that. So I'm curious about what the strategy was there. I think you talked about that a little bit, but now even looking into the next school year, and not just with our teachers, but our fellow administrators, kind of what's the thought process there after hearing so much of this theme about folks feeling burnt out? How do we get folks really energized? Because it's going to be a new type of challenge, right? Especially from the year we just came from, it's going to take a renewed focus. Tiffany, we'll start with you.
I think one thing that we've noticed, so we've been back in full across the district since kind of early April, and kids definitely have some social emotional needs to address. Some of those behavioral issues that normally we wouldn't see as much because we've developed a deep relationship with kids on campus, particularly in middle school where they're there for a short time. We have some work to do to rebuild those relationships. Somebody said to me, a teacher said to me, seems like the kids have kind of gone feral a little bit over the last year. And I was like, okay, so we had kittens, and then now they've been outside for a while and we're trying to put them back inside. They're like, this isn't what I don't want to see her all day. I want to do these other things. And so trying to really adjust to where our kids are and what they need, and not just saying we're back to normal now, so everybody come in, sit in your desk, be quiet, everything's scripted. I think we have to change the way that we teach kids and the way that we organize our classrooms. And so trying to do that with our teachers, but do that in a kind and supportive way and help them really learn to address kids, I think is going to be something. So we have 2 extra PD days next year that we're utilizing our extended learning opportunities grant money for, and to do that exact training.
Well, Tiffany, I think my kids went feral too. Now that you pointed out that way, so that's a good analogy. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, we're going to be really intentional in the fall with our staff and with our community. We've always had a strong emphasis on rigor, and we've always done really well on all of the traditional metrics, traditional ways of measuring student learning. But I want to be very, very intentional about the rigor is important. But man, we got to do the relationships, and we have to hone in on where our faculty and staff and where our students and community are in terms of their mental and emotional health. That mental and emotional well-being is going to be critical for us to getting back to normal. And I hate using that. I don't even like saying back to normal. We're going to be better than where we were pre-pandemic at a certain point. I don't know what normal is anymore, I do know that we have some healing to do in a lot of areas. In our district, we're focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, like many of my colleagues around the state and the nation. We've seen, and we're doing our best to respond to those things that have happened, both in our own community and around the country and around the world. At its most basic, though, it comes down to relationships. It comes down to knowing and understanding, respecting the lived experiences of our staff and of our students throughout the pandemic and throughout their lives, and finding ways to pull that all in together. I think if we do that, I think the rigor and the academic outcomes, those will follow.
Let me take this state and federal government look at this, Ben, because I think that a lot of the focus on attention been directing resources through expanded learning. And Tiffany, I'll have you jump in right after Ben responds. Have you been able to utilize some of the initiatives at both the state and the federal level that have been made available to you guys as you've moved through the school year and now into these summer programs? Ben, I'll have you first.
Yeah, thanks. We're extremely fortunate to have received the level of support financially over recent months and going into the next couple of years. I say that with some caution because so much of it is one time in nature, but we're gonna make use of every dollar. So, we're investing heavily in summer programming. We'll probably spend about $3 million this year on summer programming. We're budgeting the same amount for next summer. We'll make tweaks based on what we learned this summer and feedback from our staff and families. But we expect to do something similar. We're investing heavily in a technology refresh. We learned quickly that though we had a one-to-one technology program in our district, the devices were not sufficient for the demands of distance learning, daily video conferencing, et cetera. So we've already used some of our dollars to begin the refresh process so that all of our student and staff devices are top of the line. We're going to continue to do that over the course of the next year or two. We're investing heavily in social emotional support. We're adding mental health resources, and we're trying desperately to find a way to make those additions permanent. We're using one-time dollars on staff to address the immediate mental health needs of our students and staff. We know that those needs aren't going to go away in a year. So we are concerned that while we're thrilled to see those dollars in place, they are one time, and we need to find ways to continue to layer on those supports in order for everyone to be successful.
And Tiffany, your response to that, how have some of these initiatives that have come from the state and federal government helped get you guys to where you're at?
Just like with Ben, we've done a lot of technology upgrades, which are great. Our district when I started last year, we started our first one-to-one device initiative in middle school, which it turns out was great because we'd already distributed the devices in October. So that helped a lot. But we didn't have, I would say, a very tech-savvy platform across the district. Our teachers hadn't had a lot of training. We didn't have a lot of devices. So that's been really useful. We also had not invested heavily in professional development for our teachers. And so we are so thrilled that we've been able to really get our teachers some of the training that they've always needed, and that we couldn't afford or that we didn't invest in prior to this. So social emotional learning, the relationship pieces, a lot of intervention work, which we had been starting, but we hadn't done that robust training. And so we are, like Ben, so thankful to have the financial resources to do some of those things that we need to do. I'm also concerned about sustainability. I was mentioning a district in our county that's paying $80 an hour for summer school. That's great this year to get teachers, but what are you going to do next year and the following year? Are you going to be able to afford $80 an hour if your normal rate is $55? Because teachers are always going to want $80 from now on. And so we are trying to be very, very thoughtful about building things that are sustainable and using one-time dollars on one-time projects. And so but that's challenging. It's challenging because you want to build things that are sustainable.
I got one final question for both of you. And it dawned upon me when Tiffany was talking about her being relatively new to the superintendency. it occurred to me, one of the unfortunate aspects, I think, of the pandemic, or at least the last year, just because it's been such a difficult year, is that we've lost a lot of administrators. There's, as Wes always talks about, there's been folks, superintendents who have lost their jobs in the middle of the pandemic, or administrators who just aren't going to come back because it's been such a difficult year. So the result of that is we're going to have a lot of new people in these new positions, coming into this school year. So just any advice you would have for your fellow leaders, whether it be fellow superintendents or both of you have come up the ranks, folks going into a new position. As we said, it's going to be different than last year and hopefully a little bit normal, but far from normal that we knew before COVID. So Ben, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that my number one piece of advice to anyone, regardless of role or responsibility in the organization, is you have to have a rich life outside of work. Like, if you want to be your best at work, man, you need to be your best outside of work. And so whether that's family or friends or hobbies or sports or whatever it is, find ways to make life rich when you're not on the job, and you'll be better able to handle anything on the job.
Love that. Tiffany?
I have to adjust my face because, Ben, that was not what I thought you were going to say. And I'm definitely not following that. My husband's too, and so we're like all school all the time. Like last summer we were on vacation camping when the governor announced the closure of schools, and we were trying to send emails from a jet ski. Like, it was just so I hear you. Can you send me an email about how to do that? Because I literally don't know how to do that. But I'm going to put it in my head and think about it. My advice would just be hang in there. I am worried because this may just be our community, but people are really polarized. And like I said, people are mad no matter what we do. And I feel like as an administrator, that's really hard because you get into this job to do good things for kids, and you think you're doing good things for kids, and then their parents are like, you're doing this terrible harm to my kid by whatever you're doing, wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, and teachers. And so I hope we can recover from that after COVID. But I would say if you're going to be in administration, be prepared, fortify yourself to be able to know that you are doing good things for kids. And you have to figure out a way to let all that other stuff wash over you, so it doesn't eat you. Because I can see why people have left this year, because it's hard, and it's hard to constantly feel under attack. And so how do you, maybe if you join my answer with Ben's, the answer is have a rich life outside. And you don't care if people are mad at you all the time. I don't know. Maybe that's what I needed to do. But, it's harder to do something than it is to do nothing. But our calling in education right now is to do something good for kids. And so that's hard. So, but it's rewarding also when you can make progress. So hang in there, come be in administration, and then we got to have each other's backs, I think.
Tiffany, I don't know if you have paid attention to this, and I'm hoping our viewers have too. Just over Ben's right shoulder is a bell. What I'm trying to figure out, Ben, do you physically, just as part of your daily duties, go to the schools and ring the bell to start the day and end the day? Is that what the bell is there for?
That is a 90-year-old school bell, and it is the loudest bell I have ever heard in my life. So no, I do not walk around ringing it because we would all have damaged ears if I did.
See, I noticed the bat, and I was questioning the bat in my head, but I wasn't going to bring it up. And I thought ooh, maybe you have a divided community too. I don't know.
We'll save the story about the bat and how Ben uses that in his school community for the next time they come on. Ben Churchill, Superintendent, Carlsbad Unified School District. Tiffany Moore, Superintendent, Ojai Unified School District. To both of you, honored to have you on the show. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day. Edgar, you know what? Tiffany mentioned this, and I think it's important. I think it's important for you and I to know, because we just mentioned it briefly, about the mask topic. Because we had an expectation that we were going to hear something from CDC last week about it. And then obviously there would be, pardon me, a trickle-down effect from the CDC down to the state level, CDPH, OSHA, all of that. Obviously, this is going to be an important topic, perhaps that next big topic that we have to hit, and we'll be covering it here on the show. But timeline-wise, are you hearing anything?
Yeah, every time, and all our members have been on this journey with us before. Every time we say we've been told in the next week, and then the next week becomes in a couple of weeks. We're expecting something soon, both from the government. You see, that's how I dodged the question and not answer it. And I have to imagine over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be flooded with what are the changes based on the state level. We are definitely going to get a lot of changes from CDPH given the sunsetting of the blueprint. So I know that's going to be a big topic for us, dissecting what does that mean for schools? What does this mean for masks? What does this mean that our favorite subject, 3 feet of distancing? What does it mean for cohort sports? You name it. Cal OSHA, I think we're going to talk about a little bit next week in terms of some of those rules, because there's one thing about what happens with students, then what about the adults? So there's going to be a lot. So for all of my talk about maybe it'll be a slow summer, people, hopefully Tiffany gets her vacation in even before or after, and she doesn't have to be listening to us from the jet ski this time around. But there's going to be a lot coming out of our members, I think, in the weeks to come.
Hey, let's hope, because my wife booked a vacation in July. So let's hope by then we're doing it, and I'm not having to do this show with you from whatever locale she decided to pick. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. Edgar, good to see you, man.
Always fun, Nige.
Folks, we'll see you next week here, ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, the rest of your week. We'll see you next week. Have a great day.